Welcome into the Aftermatch team. Come for the footy, stay for the upsets. I'm Jeff McTanchin for Kirst this week, who Beav is winging her way back from Italy. Have you put any requests in, mate, for duty free? Got a couple of items there you want brought back from Europe, surely?
Well, look, she knows me well these days, so I'd imagine there'll be some sort of supply of sweets and chocolate coming in. But look, I'll be partial to anything. Obviously, we're holding the fort down here, as you are now too. So you're probably in line, I'd imagine, for some sort of gift too, because as she's been
Yeah.
gallivanting at the Olympics, we've been holding it all together here, mate.
Yeah, I got a couple of requests. I was gonna say for you, you're looking bloody great these days, mate. So you're putting a lot of work, and I was thinking maybe some sort of a skincare product might have been on the cards, mate. Or you're pretty well covered there.
Well, no, I don't have any sponsorship deals when it comes to skincare. So
You might
yeah,
now.
look,
You might
any
now.
freebies there, and maybe some Baroccas because the
Yeah.
weekend took it out of me, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's the length of the country we travelled for a great game this weekend.
The length and breadth, mate. It certainly took it out of the Crusaders, mate. Let's start there. 26 years for the Brumbies. They go to Christchurch. They put 50 on the Crusaders. I don't think anybody going into the weekend, I thought there'd have been some that have thought, oh, the Brumbies, they're playing well. They've got a good coach. They're well coached. They've been building nicely over the last few years. I don't think anybody thought 50 points over the Crusaders. What happened, mate?
Well, with 10 minutes to go, I still had, I guess, in my voice as I was commentating, I still felt the Crusaders would get over top of them. And the end scoreline certainly didn't reflect the sort of game we had. There was a howling wind at the Crusaders' back in the second half. So I just presumed that they were going to turn that 19-14 halftime scoreline around pretty comfortable. But you got to hand it to the Brumbies, Jeff. They just hung so tough. Early doors, I just thought, oh, I don't know if the Brumbies have got points in them. They were very predictable. They were one out, sort of just coming around the corner. And when you're live and you can see the whole field, it looked like they were fatigued. It looked like
Yeah.
they were actually struggling with the heat and the pace of the game. But you've just got to say they took their opportunities. In that second half, they were only down there about 3 or 4 times. And when they got down there, the game just exploded for them. And whether it was Lonergan being crafty down short sides or Muirhead injecting himself, it was a pretty impressive performance. The Crusaders aren't that far off though for me, Jeff.
You mentioned the Crusaders in the way that they replied. I thought George Bell, he scores that try 14-7. Traditionally they close the gap and then they turn the momentum and they use it and they pressure. But what we saw it on the other side, didn't we? The Brumbies actually were the ones that once the Crusaders hit back, they turned the screws again. They didn't deviate from their game plan. And you mentioned a couple of guys there. Ryan Lonergan, he's just outstanding, isn't he? The way that he works off the ruck. How impressive was he? And you mentioned Andy Muirhead too. I just thought he ran some brilliant lines for them.
Yeah, Lonergan for me. When you think about Australian halfbacks, you obviously White's just retired, and obviously Gordon's always a factor in the
Mm,
Wallabies, and McDermott obviously is the new superstar for the next 10 years. You sort of envision, but geez, Lonergan's performance there. It's don't forget about me sort of
mm.
performance, wasn't it? He was just so crafty. Into the Wind was such a real. It was a management sort of scenario. You couldn't kick very far, but they chose when to kick, and when they kicked off the park. And then once he got a little bit of front foot ball, that was his license to go short side, and he just kept going down there, and he linked with his wingmen. And he linked with Muirhead, and then every now and again, Kale would pop up, and Big Bobby V, who by his standards was probably quiet, really.
Yeah.
When you think about if you went to the ground yesterday thinking the Brumbies win, you'd thought Valentini would have to have a 10 out of 10 game. Valentini did
Bobby's
his
all
job.
over it. Mm.
You would have thought Bobby was all over it. But, in the end, it was some of the, I guess, the lesser names. Your Meredith at 10 continues to grow, and it's just his first season. And as I say, I couldn't speak highly enough of the craft and the game management of Lonergan at 9. He really did a good job. The Crusaders, for me, Jeff, and I hope that this loss doesn't make them change their philosophy, because there was so much to their attack that was really, really enjoyable. And they had the Brumbies skin so many times, but I just felt, and they'll see it when they're pouring over the computer today, it was just that last pass. They had them in wide channels so many times, but that last pass either hit the back shoulder and they had to check themselves, and then tuck in and take another ruck, or the last pass just didn't go to hand as they'd want it to. So there was lots to sort of enjoy about the Crusaders' performance. But if you look at the scoreline, you think, geez, what's going on here?
From a dietary perspective, beef, kale is very good for you, very nutritious. It's great to have in the smoothies. Mix it up with a bit of spinach, a few berries in there with some protein powder. But, gee, I tell you what, Stephen Larkham be loving the way that Charlie Cale is playing at the moment. He's always had so much promise. I know he's had his injury concerns early in his career, but you look at the balance of the back row now with Bobby V, the things he's always been able to do, but the athleticism of a Charlie Cale, particularly with an 8 on his back, is just so impressive and so encouraging for Australian rugby as well.
Yeah, someone who's tried to sort his diet out. Kale is something that I just couldn't get around. It's a big
Fair.
step from where my diet was to now having kale, and I've tried it. I
Yeah.
just can't. But the
It doesn't agree
Charlie,
with everybody, mate. Doesn't agree with
no,
everybody.
but the Charlie version of Kale is very impressive. And you mentioned the loose forward trio and the mix that they now have. I don't know who he reminds you of, but he's one of these big, rangy number 8s in the wide channels. And, like I know Rito could do everything.
Mm.
He could play with tight stuff, but he was that athlete in the wide channels. And it's a little bit Kieran Reid-esque as far as when he's in those sort of 5 to 10 metre channels to a touchline, and he can play with the backs and he can run like a back. Pretty impressive. But then at the same time, he got a try, just an old school try, number 8 off the back of the scrum. And you don't see that too often these days, Jeff. And considering the scrum wasn't perfect, it was an all or nothing play because Kale just went off on his own side. The wing and Lonergan, they'd gone the other direction, and Kale, if he'd been tackled, and turned over, then you could understand why. But he just decided that he was going to score the try, and there was nothing stopping him. So, hugely impressive. And when you think about, I guess, further down the track, the Wallabies mix of loose forwards, it's another one to add to a pretty good stocks, really, when you think Captain Wilson is as good as any in the world these days. He might be a handy man.
Goes on, yeah.
Yes, he'd be pretty handy to bring on if 20 to go in a test match, I reckon.
Yeah, he draws defenders. They say he's got the skill set to draw a couple of guys in, offload the ball. He's got a step. He's got pace. He's got absolutely everything. For the Crusaders, mate, obviously got a couple of cattle out, got a couple of cattle to come back in, Scott Barrett being one of them. And as you say, not panic stations yet. We're only 2 rounds in, but they're held in such high esteem, such high regard, the defending champions. 2 losses on the bounce. They've got the Chiefs and Blues next. Doesn't get any easier for them, but you just sense that they've been able to turn a corner before and they've got the quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there's no way you'd be putting any panic stations in Christchurch today when they get together. The thing is, as I said, there were so many just little opportunities that I think they'll go back and review and think, we just needed to take 2 or 3 more. There was a couple of big clean line breaks in the first half when they were playing into that howling wind that they didn't ice. I think about the Sevu Reece when he got into open space and he tried to hook it back over to Fihaki. And I mean, any kick yesterday was difficult, but trying one of those sorts of kicks off your left foot there was difficult when he had Taha Kemera on the other side of him. And then there was, as I mentioned earlier, every time they came out of their 30 or 40, they actually shifted to the edges and they looked like they could skin them most times, but they just with that last pass. So it's not panic stations yet. I thought the first 20 minutes, physically, the forward pack was so up for it. And that's why I thought, I to be fair, after 20 minutes, I thought this could be a pretty mundane game with the Crusaders sort of doing a job, because I just saw the Crusaders defensively just smacking the one-off runners of the Brumbies. So physically they were there for a good part of it, but then maybe that was the plan all along from the Brumbies and try and take something out of them. But I certainly don't think they're too far off. And to be fair, now we know where they're going this week, and it might be, although you might look at it and go, "Oof, in danger of going 0-3," it's also probably perfect for them because it's the sort of game that's going to get them up emotionally, and they will be there in Hamilton. So, yes, no, Scott Barrett's a big loss, but there's still so much cattle there. I do have concerns about the great Cody Taylor's ribs back or whatever it was, because he gutsed out 20 minutes when those knees hit him in I think it was the ribs or the back when he accidentally, of course, but geez, he hobbled around for 20 or 30 minutes the best he could. It was a big blow that he took.
No, it was gutsy stuff. Speaking of hobbling around, he's been doing it for 20 odd years. But playing like a young man who's getting a first crack in his turn. I think we all can agree that James Slips. He's a great bloke, and to see him pull up to 200 and get just behind White Crockett in Christchurch too, rather poetic in that
Yes.
performance. You talk about the way that they play the game, the Brumbies, but yes, they've got a good coach, but a guy there who's no longer playing Test rugby, but he wants to bring the curtain down on his Brumbies career the right way, and he's playing some bloody good footy too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was around the park everywhere yesterday
Mm.
there. He was popping up. He was on Lonergan's shoulder. He was inside Meredith, outside Meredith, and a couple of times got them on the front foot. And he was a bit of a go-to man at times when they got inside the 22. So, wonderful occasion. And may I just say, the Christchurch faithful, who it must be
Yeah.
said, sometimes if you go down there as a chief or what have you, they
Or a
can it
Highlanders
can
fan.
or a Highlanders, it can be a little bit hostile, but credit to the great people of Christchurch. They did a wonderful job honouring Slipper as he ran out to start the game, and then when he came off, standing ovations from the good crowd that was there. So no, brilliant stuff.
Yeah, good rugby people. Right, 30 years, Beeve, of Super Rugby, 30 iconic players. We had the great one, Cully, last week. Actually saw him in Wellington on Friday night, and he did offer me a round of golf at some point, which I was just blown away with. So that was I'll slip that one in the back pocket and get around in with Cully at some point. He was last week. I just want maybe we'll just throw this out there. I'm just thinking this week. And the way that the Brumbies played and the attitude that they've got them playing with Stephen Larkham, Bernie,
Yes.
he certainly is one of the iconic players, and just great to see him involved. His fingerprints all over the way they're playing at the moment too.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll follow up Cully as our one of our 30 iconic Super Rugby legends. And yes, when you think about how the Brumbies playing at the moment, how lucky are you if you're young Meredith when you've got that as your coach, So great stuff there. But as a player, when you think Brumbies, there's probably about 4 or 5 which would fall into this category of iconic superstars. But I dare say he's got a grandstand named after him in Canberra, so he is at the top of the pile with obviously his great mate and halfback,
Mm.
Georgie Gregan. So the thing about Larkham, obviously he was transformed. He burst onto the scene as a fullback and then became a 10. And what he did and how he played the game, like he had the ability to glide at essentially full pace and then throw a 20-meter cutout pass at the same time or a delicate kick. So
Yeah.
it's you look at a lot of first fives, it's either one or the other with them, what they're about to do. Yeah, you sort of know what they're going to do. I mean, I tried to emulate the ability to run fast and still throw a cutout pass, but I just couldn't resist tucking and going. But with Larkham, when you were defending him, he'd sit you on his heels, and then he'd be able to throw a cutout ball to Mortlock on an outboard, and all of a sudden you're under your sticks because you didn't know it, or he had Gits running a line, or Joe Roth, or guys like this. So he was a phenomenal player, and he used everything around them. And as I said, I was lucky enough just to have a couple of games at the start of my career against him, and boy, did he give you an education and just sort of let you know that you've got a long way to go, because he had every skill in the book, and with the quality of team he had around him, they were so tough in those days to defend. And I think one of my early games in the Chiefs jersey, we had an afternoon game against the Brumbies, and Larkham was in full cry, and I just thought to myself as I walked off Bruce Stadium, as it was at the time, wondering, maybe I'm not quite as good as I think I am, and not quite ready to be here, because he just had so much to his game, Jeff, and he
Yeah.
certainly is, when you think Brumby icons, at the top of the list.
Amazing, Beeve, that you got to, as you say, play against them, I guess, in the early part of your rugby education, if you want to call it that. But the combination he formed with George Gregan obviously goes without saying, but you get the feeling again. I mean, that was the last time they won Super Rugby back then. Such a wonderful combination. You get the feeling again that belief is coming back to Canberra, and no short part through what Bernie's doing as coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always going to be the great thing with the Brumbies is has that belief really got through to him? I think last year they started to look quite good and then probably didn't put their best foot forward in Hamilton in the semi-final. So it'll be interesting. I think it's always the thing with the Brumbies. They'll be there at semi-final time. I mean, I don't know if you are the same, Jeff, but I was quick to think, maybe the Reds will be the Aussies' best challenger this year. And if not the Reds, then all the superstars hanging out in Sydney at the Waratahs. But we always do it. You always forget about the Brumbies, and then they, I guess, put their first 2 weeks on the table like they have, and straight away it's back to the Brumbies. It's back to the always perennial contender that is the team from Canberra.
They'll be thereabouts. Shout out to Bushbuck. As always, time for our Bushbuck moment. I've got one up my sleeve. Beav, what was yours over the weekend, mate? There's a few there. What did you go for?
Yes, great to have Bushbuck on board, but my moment, and there's no bias involved here, but when I think about
I'm sure.
When I think about pure moment, it was the
Highlanders.
Intelligence, the bravery of Quindapire taking a quick goal line dropout, regather, holding the ball in one hand, faking a pass, and then finding Leroy Carter. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but our first 100-metre try of the year had to be this week's Bushbuck moment of the week.
Yeah, look, I think, mate, there'd be a few fans further south that might think there was a fairly dubious call there. But hey, look, mate, what do they say, B? There's always another weekend of footy, and it's It's fish and chip paper now, isn't it?
So, it certainly is.
We'll move on. Like a great game of footy for me. And we talk about the changes of players heading overseas, Sevu Reece and others. But Caleb Tangitau, and I saw this kid play at Westlake Boys when I started out calling college footy, and you could tell then he had the size, he had the pace. But to do that at Forsyth Bar Stadium, to break through the line from 40 out and score, I guess, just an old school pin your ears back, son. Pure gas tries, that you can't teach pace. He's got him, mate. Caleb Tangitau. I know you're a fan, but that moment, that might have been the moment that just elevated him a little bit more.
Yeah, I think certainly if he was on the radar of whoever our next All Black coach is going to be, I think he's properly in consideration now. I mean, in isolation, what a treat it was to be there and see the four wingers on show. Yeah. All four of them. When you think about the quality, were absolutely outstanding. But there was something about that try from Tangitau. You're right, Jeff. When he just said, right, we need something. There was 5 minutes to go, 2 converted tries to win them the game. He just went bang. And he's clearly as fast as anyone in this country. But what's probably underestimated, if you have never seen him live, is how big he is. And, I mentioned it yesterday when you see Will Jordan live. He's a big unit through the hips and the legs, and Tangitau is not too dissimilar. And that all that means is when it's going that fast, you've got to really get a decent shoulder on, or else they're going to break any arm tackles. And Tangitau did that on a couple of occasions. So it is exciting. He's playing at the best arena in the world to be an outside back who plays on top of the ground. That Forsyth Bar Stadium, you know what you're going to get. It's going to be a hard deck, and it's tailor-made for a couple of those backs in the Landers, Jeff. It has to be said.
We'll rip into that game, the Highlanders and the Chiefs. The Chiefs, of course, getting it done. Narrow margin, of course, though, in Dunedin. But good to see, Beav, that you actually got out of the octagon. I think Justin Marshall was floating around somewhere, and you did make it to Christchurch, which we were all pleased to see and hear your voice.
Yeah, look, there was a few decisions being made post-game, which certainly had the ability to influence my Sunday performance. But no, just reviewed the game well with Marshy and then got out of Dunedin safely. Yep. But no, what a occasion. I've been to Dunedin plenty of times, played there, but it's the first time I've been able to sit there and look at the zoo and the atmosphere that a full zoo in O Week. Of course, for our overseas people, O Week means the first week of university, and Dunedin is our absolute pinnacle as far as education in this country. It's where all our doctors and smart minds go to get qualified. And well, of course, all our smart minds.
Yep. Thank you.
And they really enjoy their first week at university, and boy, they brought some atmosphere. It was so electric for, I guess, probably 60 minutes when it was still very much game on. But for me, the Landers are a step up where they were last year, and
Big
yes,
time.
it's a real shame that there's no Fabian Holland and Pledger, because I don't think you can hide from the fact if you sprinkle those two in there, you've got a team capable of lifting the trophy, and they still might. They still might, but geez, it would change things considerably. But the thing about the Landers, I think, in the weekend against the Chiefs, and yes, they only went down by 3. It was just a couple of big moments for them, Jeff.
Yeah, yeah.
It-
I think, yeah. Carry on, Beaver, and I'll give you my 2 cents.
Yeah, I just think, it was a game of toing and froing, but 2 moments for me. We talked about the Bushbuck moment of the week with Leroy Carter going the distance. That should have been a try. There's no hiding from the fact that the Landers went the cross kick option, and look, they were only a fingertip away from grounding it. However, I think if you review it, they'll see the numbers that they had. It was a walk-in. It was a draw and pass scenario of probably a 7-on-3 scenario. And then they did so well when they had Nareki out of the game for 10 minutes. They did so well to hold the Chiefs to a 0-0 scoreline for 10 minutes. And then Nareki, I've just written down on my notes for the game, geez, they've done well here. And I looked up and the Chiefs have scored.
Yeah.
And it was just a simple overthrow, which when I say simple overthrow, it was an overthrow that they can control. And Takiaho scores one of his 2 tries. So at the end of the day, just those key moments, which against a team like the Chiefs, like the Crusaders, they don't give you much. And they were very professional in the way they went about their victory.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned moments. For me, that there was one moment there where, and you would have seen this too, and I just thought, gut feeling watching that it was where the momentum turned. Highlanders were down in the 22. They had the Chiefs on the rack. Falau Fakataba's at the base. He's looking open to who to pass to, and he does that kind of little. He just hesitates for a moment, and I'm thinking, is he trying to milk one here? And then a hand comes in. It comes forward. Chiefs turn over. They go down the other end of the park, and a few moments later, that they get some points. So for me, I think that was a key moment. I think the cameras cut to the coaching box, and Jamie Joe was furiously writing some notes down, no doubt to dish out on Monday. But you mentioned moments. I think that was probably one of them. But from a Highlanders, I guess, supporters' perspective, from Jamie's perspective, from Clark Dermody's perspective, as you say, they're doing things differently this year. There's a professional approach to their game management. They're not panicking. And as you rightly point out, they're without Fabian Holland. They're without Dylan Pledger, a guy that a lot of people were looking forward to seeing this season, his first full year of professional footy. So for them to be beating the Crusaders last week, right in the contest against the Chiefs, I mean, there's a lot to like about the way the Highlanders are playing too.
Absolutely. And yes, it's just 2 guys, but for those who aren't across the squads and the depth in this country, maybe from overseas, the Landers, their depth isn't what the other teams are. It's been widely acknowledged that they don't get as many down there as I'd like. So when they get their little golden ones, they need them on the field. When you think and the Landers have success, it's because they had a couple of Smiths and a Fekitoa doing great things, and then they build the pieces around that. And then this year, it certainly looked like they could build around a few people, and they are. And they are, there's no doubt about it, but it would have been just a touch of class. Just a special mention to, we talked about the wings earlier, but Jonah Nareki, what a player, Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, his
100%.
50th game, but he's got, I don't know how many times I've said it. In another time, in another world, he'd been All Black, or they'd be talking about him. I know he's a bit of a forgotten man because he struggles with his injuries to do a whole season and what have you, but he's got so much to his game. His left foot, like he's a brilliant attacker, but his left foot is such an asset for those Landers. The amount of times he found grass, especially in that first half, and he was pinning the Chiefs in the corners. Wonderful performance, and as I say, does get the headlines of other wingers, Jeff, but certainly you can really appreciate the skill from Jonah Nareki.
A little bird told me, we're talking about why perhaps he wasn't playing more Test rugby, maybe for Fiji, but I think there is a thought there that not everything is said and done with his career and the way that might expand in New Zealand. So we'll just wait and see. But as you say, he's certainly a winger with a lot of experience, and he's got the complete package. Not the biggest guy in the world, fairly diminutive in size compared to a lot of the other guys running around, as you say, Caleb Tangitau's of this world and others, but he certainly has a complete game. Just a couple more, mate, before we move on to our Jonahs. Quinn Tupai again. I think I'm going to have to change up fantasy. Like I'm a Highlanders man from the deep south. Jim's in there, but maybe it's time to change it up the way Quinn's playing. We did mention before when we were chatting before the podcast, Beeb, about the year it is for New Zealand rugby too. Man, if you're looking at places where we've got a jam at the moment, you got to say it's midfield. But mate, Quinn is he's putting his best foot forward, making every post a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on your fantasy team, you can have the ability. I've got both of them. I've got
Okay.
both Quinn and Tavatawa Nawa on my team.
Yeah.
I wrote down a couple of times live there
Throwing that down now.
the
Yep.
collisions that were happening when Tavatawa Nawa or Quinn Tupai were carrying, and often they went after each other, which is great.
Yep.
You know, like it's a competitive world, and they're both wanting the same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
some of those carries were just huge, and you could actually hear the collision in the
Oh,
grandstand. Quinn's got this ability where he's never really, and Tavatamanai, to be fair, has got it too. He's never really hit. It's the leg drive. I mean, we've talked about the size of some of the boys and where their strength comes from. Well, you look at Quinn, and it's all through the hips, you know, and he can just ride out tackles. Obviously, like Tavatamanai, brilliant over the ball, but yeah, you're right. Those two in particular just went hammer and tongs at each other, and yep, it's a good problem to have for New Zealand rugby. Unfortunately, you can't get them all on the field at once, but getting the balance right of that All Black midfield is going to be fascinating to see, because, I mean, we're only in week 2, and we're already seeing some performances from midfielders, and I know we haven't even got to another couple of All Blacks at the Hurricanes yet and how they went. So, no, Quinn Tupai certainly just picking up where he left off last year with the All Blacks.
What I like about those two, we'll move to another man soon who was great in that game, but what I like about those two as 12s, and particularly in the international game, is the ability to jackal. And,
Yep.
they're very, very good at it, and you need that on the test game too at the moment. But we can talk for days about who we have at centre maybe, but for those guys, as you say, advantage line carriers, they can turn the ball over. Fantastic. Samisoni Tokiaho, mate. He was. I did make a late change. Sorry, Bradley Slater. Bradley was my initial hooker. I thought he might do a number over there with the Blues, but I just had a feeling. I thought the Chiefs get that line out working. They get the line out drive going. Samisoni is just so good off the back of the maul. So he was in there and he got some good points too. Great game.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Semi Sonny, because he got points on fantasy, but he also got points in our weekly segment of the Jonahs, which is, of course, where we find our player of the year, which the current leader was big Tavatawa Nawa from the previous
Mm-hmm.
week. But Semi Sonny actually got 3 points this week. He was the man of the round. 2 great tries, of course, 2 critical tries. It is like clockwork. When he gets on the back of a Chiefs maul, and he gets it starting to
Yep.
go, you know he's going to score. He's just so strong from sort of 2 or 3 out. You know, obviously he's a powerfully built man and low to the ground. So another great performance from Takiaho. He is our
Yeah.
Jonahs 3 points win of the weekend, and I've got 2 from. Kirst said we weren't going to give any points to Australians, but she's not here, so I've just ruled that out. And
Your break
Lonergan,
rank. Yep.
of breaking rank, you could not give Lonergan at least 2 points from his performance in Christchurch yesterday. And speaking of giving out points, have you got anyone? There's 1 point still floating around if you
Yeah,
want to
there's
give it.
1 point there, mate. Oh, there is. And just a quick shout out to Adam Lennox. He did get it. You mentioned Sonny and how good he is under that close to the line. Adam Lennox got under him and held a try up at 1 point in that game. My 1 point, the Hurricanes are amazing. Their wingers are amazing. Josh Morby coming back from France, fantastic. 3 tries. Fehi obviously gave him one of those. He got a couple too. But Geordie Barrett, and again, this is the conundrum that later on and looking toward next year, where do we play Geordie potentially in a black jersey? But I thought, if he came back from Leinster and he just hasn't missed a beat. He's looking good. He's looking dialed in. He's got his rhythm and the creativity to his game as well, and that ability to take the ball to the line, which we like to see. So he's 1 point
Yeah,
for me.
Oh, absolutely, and Geordie's well deserving of his 1 point. He's got every skill, and that's what I think makes him such a problem defensively for
Mm.
opposition. And look, the Hurricanes don't shy away from him. They don't underutilise him. That's for sure. Most set phase attack goes through him. It goes 9 to 12. So often the occasion with the Hurricanes attack, and then they play off the back of that. And because he's such a presence, he's 6'4",
Yeah.
100 odd clicks. You're gonna have to sit on your heels and mark him because he's got the ability to go over you, through you, or any which way. But then when he's holding the ball in two hands, he's sitting defence down, and then that's, as you saw, all the Hurricanes attack. First phase, they were really having a crack at Moana and making some pay out of it. They got tries, they got big line breaks, so it is all on the back of him as far as his ball playing. And, obviously now with another
Brett
injury,
Cameron, yeah.
which is absolutely devastating for Brett Cameron, considering his luck of the last 2 or 3 seasons. There's going to be even more probably go through Geordie.
Yeah, so it's just devastating to see what happened to Brett at the Cape Tin. Look, he went down. It was his other knee. It was the left one last time around, the AC that he did. But he came back, made a remarkable recovery last year to play a bit of Super Rugby. So phenomenal that he came back in the first case. But yeah, it didn't look good. And now you talk about it, what happens on Ruben Love will come back in a few weeks' time. Harry Godfrey out for the season too. They do have Lucas Cashmore in the wider group development side of things too. So he's as well. Callum Harkin, he came into that role on Friday night too. But I think, like you're alluding to, mate, and a lot of Hurricanes fans might be listening and saw that game on Friday night and thought, okay, what are we going to do? We've got another issue at 10. But like you kind of pointed out before, a lot of the play goes from 9. You got one of the best halfbacks in the world in Cam Roigard, and then you got Geordie. So whoever they put in there, I think there won't be necessarily as much pressure as there might be on another franchise who is solely relying on that pivot to really direct a lot of their play.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's not all doom and gloom because, you're going to get Ruben Love back in a couple of weeks. And look, there's no doubt that I think someone like Harkin could do the job for now. I've long said that it wouldn't be beyond our country's best 9 to wear the 10 jersey. How he plays, how intelligent he is, how he manages games. It's not beyond him. And it wouldn't be the worst. I know the Hurricanes are worried only about the Hurricanes right now, but maybe if we could find someone who could do both 9 and 10, a la the great John Preston, Jeff, it makes your bench options a whole lot more, doesn't it? So, look, I'd love to see Cam get some time there at 10. I mean, Geordie himself could do it as well. And considering the depth of midfield
100%.
options that the Hurricanes have got, you could just throw him the 10 jersey. It's not too dissimilar to the role he plays. You can tell he does all the tactical decision-making as far as what's going on where. And we've already mentioned how much goes through him as far as the pivotal playmaker. So, look, they've got options. They'll probably go Harkin to make it less disruption. But as a fan and a curious fan, I'd love to see either a Roigard or a Barrett get a crack there at some point.
Yeah, we might see Geordie play more first receiver anyway, in the next few weeks with Ruben before he comes back. So, a couple of other guys there. Peter Lakai, again, I thought was impressive. But Braden, you're saying, been watching Braden for a while, and obviously he's great on the super scene. He's unbelievable for Manawatu, scores some phenomenal tries. But you talk about the mix, the loose forward mix, and who the next All Blacks coach, if it's Jamie Joseph, whoever it may be. They're going to be looking at different players, different skill sets, the way that they play. Braden, that second try he scored, he had the in and out, the step, the balance with his footwork. Man, he's a talent. He's a very good player.
Yeah, much like we talked about Kale at the top of the show, Braden also has things that some can't do. He can't do other stuff that others can do, but he's got this other abilities that others just don't have. And look, as far as if you're looking further afield, it certainly depends on how you're going to play the game. If you're going to play how we've played in the last couple of years, which is, I suggest, very Northern Hemisphere. We've decided that Test match rugby, we've got to play like the North by the looks of it. and not play to our strengths, then maybe he's not the man for the job. But if you're prepared to play with a little bit more of, I think, our traditional sort of game and heads up footy and play a bit quicker, then someone like Yossei's, you touched on, Jeff, Super Rugby, if you put his last 3 years up against anyone, his numbers would be incredible. You look at the Hurricanes, and much is made about the Hurricanes who's forward trio, and you think about the names there with Lakai and Karifi and Brad Shields, but both Yossei and Flanders in recent years,
yeah.
geez, they've done a job for them, don't they? And it's the same thing with so many guys. We mentioned Nareki. If he was to be named in the All Blacks, you couldn't protest it at all because you'd say, no, he's absolutely deserved that. So,
tick.
Exactly. So, no, it'll be good to see Yossei get more time and just see where he goes. But certainly he has a set of skills that are different. And dare I say it, they suit the Hurricanes. Geez, I know they had the first week off. Geez, they looked like they were shot out of a cannon. They were ready to go.
And Mills said to me before the game, he said, you got to get Fehi or Josh in your back three, but I didn't do it, and I regret it. Like, I massively regret it. I was calling Fehi's second try thing, and in my head, I'm like, why didn't I do that? Hey, speaking of fantasy, mate, the cheat code, let's just brush over this quickly. You're 571. Tokyo 83 points, 189th in Aftermatch, mate. Let's just go through fantasy. I'm struggling a lot. I was cracking start week one, and then I picked Brett Cameron as 5'8", but also as my captain. So he still got 40 points. So it was not a bad wee haul before he unfortunately went off injured. But those people that are picking Max Jorgensen and making him triple captain or Fehi, although I hazard to say that a few people won't be too impressed that he gave Josh that meat pie on a dish inside of the end goal.
No, I think last year we picked up on the fact that maybe the Hurricanes have a team fantasy account because they are a team that likes to hand the odd try to each other. But yes, Takeaho with 83 points was my masterstroke this week. Perifetta, I think he was my captain this week. I regret it now. I had no Hurricanes. And
yeah.
That was an error from me. But look, I'm up to 189th in the Aftermatch League. Make sure you join our league to be a part of the action. So I don't know if is that a good thing or not, but I know I was a lot lower last week. So maybe 189th is not too bad.
Mate, I think the key is you've got the boosters. So don't be tempted to use but there's always a temptation to use your boosters early. Keep your powder dry. Wait until a match later on the season when we know who the form horses are, who's going to nail someone, and then we get that game in the weekend, and then you know who a form player is. Then you make them triple captain. You throw every single bloody booster at it, and you get 400 points, and you go from 189th, mate, to bloody top 10. That's going to happen. Next.
You've just got to pick the moment that Takeaho is going to score multiples.
Exactly.
And see where he ends up.
100%, mate. Hey, let's brush over this quickly before we get our picks for the weekend. Force Blues, Wild West, sweltering conditions for them. The Blues, halftime, 17-14, down, turn it around, 4 tries in sweltering conditions in the second half, 42-32 in the end. You'd take that. Vern Cotter would take that. Wild West, hard place to play against a Force side who would have wanted to bounce back. So not bad points this early in the season.
No, absolutely. I think there was certainly no doom and gloom. I think after their performance against the Chiefs the week earlier, they were very solid defensively, and the attack wasn't great against the Chiefs, but it started to come for them a little bit. It was interesting. Again, there was a howling wind going one way in that first half, and it forced them to play. And some of the interaction and getting out into the wide channels, I thought Sullivan was great out in the wide channels of his decision making, and then the ability to use his boot or feeders outside who are potent. So no, it's one of those things. It's a job done for Vern. They're off their duck. They're 1 from 2. They got their first win, and now they can probably start to build. And I look forward to seeing that clash this week because, as you said, we're about to do our picks, and boy, is all of a sudden got a mouth-watering game on their tour now. The Blues.
Yeah, well, let's start with our one, Blues Brumbies. As you say, they've broken the duck. I guess, mate, when you go on tour earlier in a season than perhaps later, how I guess unifying is it when you do get a bit of traction on the road early? You know you're going to come back and play some games. So I suppose for Vern Brumbies, you couldn't ask for more than a clash in Canberra.
No, absolutely. I mean, I used to love getting on the road, and we, of course, were lucky enough to go to Africa, and that was our tour mostly. But now the boys, they quite often they have the 2 games in Australia, which is great for team morale, to getting around each other. Coaches love it, probably too much so, because they've got full access 24 hours to go and say, hey, come look at my computer. I want to show you something. But look, it's great for them. And I give them a real chance. It's almost too tough to call, but I'm probably going to lean towards our Kiwi boys. Only just, though. It is going to be an absolute belter there. And it's another Sunday game, I think, Jeff, is it? Am I right
Yeah,
there?
indeed. Yeah. Look,
So,
I'm going to go. I'm going to go against you, mate. There, and it'll probably never be welcome back on this show, or indeed another rugby podcast in New Zealand. But I just think the way the Brumbies took care of business in Christchurch,
oh, yeah.
I think bet against them at your peril, particularly coming back to Canberra. And it'd be great to see what sort of crowd they get in there at GIO. I think they'll get a good crowd in too. So look, hard
Yeah.
place to play. They're playing some good footy. Let's roll through the others. Moana Force, obviously Moana first up in Lautoka, hard place to play, travel and win. They were up against it. Started well against the Canes, but you just think maybe Moana, back on home paddock, they should be too strong.
Absolutely. Of course, this one's at Pukekohe. Another home
Stomping
for
grounds, mate. Yeah.
yes, another home for the Moana Pacific team. I give it to them. I think they win. I think this one potentially was targeted. They rested a few after the heat in Lautoka. So no, I'm going Moana and forced to remain winless.
I think the Highlanders will do okay against the Reds, but I don't know. Again, it's a team that's had a week off. They come back, and if you're talking about New South Wales, you're talking about the Brumbies this year as a contender. I know you had them sort of earmarked potentially as a team that could go deep, but Matty Fezler, Aidan Ross, Zane Nongor up front for them. You got Hunter Paisami, Josh Fluke. You look at their back three: the Junkyard Dog, Tim Ryan, Lachlan, Lockie Anderson, and Jock Campbell. They've got players right through that 15 that are top quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, they started against the Waratahs without Liner, Carter Gordon, Wilson, McDermott. Be interesting to see how many of them appear now. But I tell you what, it's another big moment for the Landers. Their first little trip away, and they give me a feel, the Landers, that they're not going to go away easily. So I give the Landers a chance over in Brisbane. It's a wonderful place to go play, Suncorp. And all the Kiwi teams get excited about. It's a great deck. So I'm tempted to go the Landers on this one, Jeff.
I like it. Hey, I'm not gonna disagree with you there, mate. Let's go to a one that I think it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one when you talk about the Drua back in the islands. You got the Canes coming over. Obviously, the injury at 5'8", what they do around Brett Cameron, the situation there, a little bit of a tinker to go on there for Clark Laidlaw. So to me, that's not cut and dry. I just can't. I don't know which way that's gonna. Which Drua team turns up? That's the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, we've seen many a Kiwi team go over there and get tripped up, haven't we? So yes, the smart money would probably lean towards the Hurricanes, but look, the Drua, they won't stay down for long. They're going to get a win at home pretty soon. And the Hurricanes, as you say, quite a long build-up, so they'll be able to get the bodies all fresh and ready. But I'll go the Hurricanes, but only on probably reputation. No great confidence in that one.
Oh, I don't even think I need to ask you this final question of the podcast, mate. But I've got to. I'm obligated to. So let's do it. Chiefs
Yep.
Crusaders. Obviously, you're going for the Crusaders there. Big bounce back win, huge win for them.
Match of the round, Jeff, no doubt about it. And do I expect a bounce back from the Crusaders? Yes, I do. There will be a bounce back. But I guess if you're Jonah Gibbs and your team's 2-0 and maybe walking around quite tall, you couldn't get a better game for your first home game. The Crusaders coming to Waikato Stadium. I give it to the Chiefs, but I don't see much in this. I think this is going to be an absolute beauty. And it'll be physical and brutal as ever. And I can't wait. I'm going to be there, so really looking forward to this one.
Speaking of physical and brutal, I know you wanted to go out for a fish today. You might have something on the end of a line this afternoon. You're going to make some time for that?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind getting a bit of the black magic kit out there and catching a few snapper because
Sounds good.
And we talked about diet. We talked about diet at the top. I get some fresh snapper and maybe get some of that kale you talk about. So
Mate,
we'll see how we go.
as much as I love Charlie Kale, it's snapper all day if you're offering it up over kale, like hands down. Hey, Beef, mate, as always, good to have a yarn over some code with you. Obviously, we know where you're going to be this coming weekend, but enjoy the week, rest up, and enjoy the spot of fishing.
Cheers, Jeff. Thanks for filling in, mate. Outstanding. And I'll make sure that duty-free present is coming from our illustrious co-worker.
Beauty, mate. Cheers.